we'll bring this meeting to order. Welcome to the November 11th special called building program meeting. And Mr. Zago, you said you would lead us in our pledge today? Thank you, Mr. Zago. Very nicely done. Okay. Well, we have a pretty full agenda for tonight. So, Mr. Odom, if you want to get us started off.
Okay. We do. We've looked at the growth in some areas. We still have the 146 portable classrooms. Looking at trying to anticipate, and as you know, especially those of you who have been on the board for a few years, when we start making projections out beyond about 3, they begin to get kind of iffy. Where will the next subdivision be built? Or we get surprised sometime with that. So we can be fairly accurate, I think, with 2 to 3 years out, and the others, but we need to list them. The commission has asked us to list, where do you think you're going? What does it look like? And we do need the long-range plan. So looking at the first is our best recommendation at the time tonight. This is something you probably need to study, and if you want to approve this plan, it may not be something you want to do tonight. It may be one of those things you want to mull over. We can bring it back at a board meeting and say, let's vote on it then, because, and we find out additional information tonight, we can change some of it. So looking at this particular sheet in the yellow that's highlighted on yours are things that we're already doing, and of course the Blackman Middle Annex, Smyrna Primary, we're in both of those, and some of the major capital outlays. Gary's going to have some more on that information for you. Eagleville Addition, you're going to have some pictures for that tonight. As we look about something new or what we do not have right at this time, the Oakland Middle Annex, we've talked about that because of the size of Oakland and Siegel Middle, and you can kind of look, we did provide you with Oakland Middle this year's got 1,051, then you look down at Siegel Middle and you see 983. Buildings are typically built for about 850, but we can accommodate 1,000 pretty well. Get beyond that, you start needing portables and all, and that's what we have, at a number of our middle schools already. So one thought is to have the same facility or one similar to that as what we did at Blackman. This is cheaper because you can keep much of your core, so that's a thought. The Eagleville practice field is another one that's come up recently. That this is an area that we're using now, but we need to secure it for the future for the boys and girls of Eagleville, and that area is still growing. And you kind of look at the growth again. You can see how the growth at Eagleville is occurring. 902. I would, a few years ago, if you asked me would there be 900 at Eagleville, I said I don't know when, but we're here already. So it's obviously drawing people. Then capital repairs for 14. To handle the growth, and this will be something that we'll begin to look at, some of the properties we travel Saturday and all. The ideal situation for us in looking at February 14, June 15, kind of on the left, the middle school, Smyrna area, elementary school, Smyrna area, it would be desirable, once again, our parents love it when we can cluster a couple of schools together like that. Certainly elementary and middle. It helps us on infrastructure. It makes it some cheaper when you're running that sewer and gas lines, water lines, everything that you're doing, roads, that sort of thing to do it. So we have some preliminary designs for you tonight to take a look at that. Also, the Oakland Middle Annex, if we're going to get that land, we need to move on some of that because there's some pending development there. So the original land we looked at was off the table. We talked about that earlier. So kind of your thing there is how much longer would be available for that would come off. Be certainly cheaper at this time than trying to go out and purchase another whole middle school on that north side of town. And then you've had on your capital proposal for a number of years, and I know those of you that represent the Smyrna-Laverne area especially have talked so many times about the difference in the seating arrangement, what happens on those home games or bleachers. So we have that. It comes from the old formula, or the old 5-year plan. Again, that comes back. We'll look at some of that tonight and where it might be, what that concept, how it might fit. Going on down to June 15, we've talked about this. Here, our concern is the Veterans Parkway area. Right now Murfreesboro is growing. Blackman is continuing to grow. And if you're going to open it up maybe in 17 or something, we're 3 to 4 years out, we have to think about this. So that's something we're kind of putting on our radar that we need to look at, because when it comes to 7th and 8th grade, they're ours. The city certainly helped us some with 6th this year, certainly with elementary at Blackman Elementary. But when you look at the size of Rockvale Middle already, if you kind of glance across and look at that, they have 949, so you're not going to have a lot of additional capacity there at Rockvale. It'd be very difficult to add the addition on at Rockvale also, simply because of the land is needed for the high school too, when we purchased that at the time. Another one that we've looked at for some time is a Roy Waldron addition. The portables there, let me look again and see, I forget how many portables exactly at Roy Waldron. There's 7 classrooms and portables at Roy Waldron. Still growing a little bit in that area, them and Lake Farm area. Happened to be with Jesse Register Friday in superintendent's meeting, and he is saying Metro Nashville, the Antioch area is the area that's still really growing for him. He said they're really having trouble accommodating people in the Antioch area and the whole southeast corridor of Davidson County. And of course, when you start looking at that, it kind of spills over into Rutherford County. That's where we are seeing and will see continued growth in that area too. So there's some thought there about that Roy Waldron addition, the David Urey renovation. That was one that where we had some the design of it, where the office sits back in the building. You have to come through the cafeteria to get to the office and some of the other areas. So we talked about that for some time too. So there's going to be some suggestions for you tonight to take a look at that. I don't know how many of you have been to John Coleman in a while. There's 17 portables there. That classrooms. That's really become a stretch for us, which we didn't have this on the 5-year program before. One of the very good things that we have learned, we actually own the land that's kind of across that entry road coming into John Coleman, that land that goes up to where the Smyrna Park starts. So it gives us options. You got some building costs, but we have some land too to accommodate that. Of course, much of John Coleman, part of the part was built during build up for the Second World War. Mr. Zago even went to school there once upon a time. So we've added to it a little bit. So tonight we got some concepts and possibilities for you to look at That's probably, when you look at your building, that has some of the most need for renovation, and to handle some of their growth too. Actually, it's been interesting to see some of their up to 481 now. But anyway, that's something we need to take a look at. Then physical repairs. Siegel High addition, on that side of town for high schools, that was in the original drawing for Siegel. So this kind of gives you a concept of, especially those of you that are new on the board, how we can add an additional 2-story there, accommodate additional high school students there. And Laverne Middle addition. I asked Gary to look at what we could do, and then we talked with Mr. Binkley too. Could we do anything at Laverne? That area is not going to grow greatly simply because you're bordered by the lake, you're bordered by Davidson County, you're bordered by the airport some in there. But we don't have any ability to handle additional growth in that area on that side of 41, 70 there, and looking at that. So, not looking at the concept of what we are doing at Blackman, but is there a way to get some additional classrooms at Laverne economically, without having to change much of the core structure? Again, it's cheaper to build a classroom than anything. It's when you get to the core. So Mr. Binkley's kind of come up with some ideas and proposals there. There certainly stands out there that we could use if we need to. When you get down to what's to open in August of 19, again, what you're looking at here, by then you're probably, and this is maybe a year later, the high school, there's going to be a high school somewhere in 19, 20, somewhere in that, another probably elementary, another middle. Just as you put it out there that far ahead, you're going to have to be in some phase of looking at that. As we looked at why we chose to, and I kind of tell you why we chose to maybe move, it's Rockworth or Whitworth Buchanan, Rockvale or Whitworth Buchanan is where we own properties to put the high school in both of those. And I know the people in both of those areas are very, very interested in that. There's a couple of things going on. We have to look at it in another way. If we go ahead immediately and would try to start building the Rockville High School, I do think there'll continue to be growth, but in order to get that school up to 1,500, your feeder area would be to pull about 700 or so from Riverdale. Are you going to pull 700 or so from Blackman High? And then we're adding on to Eagleville now, and we really do not have a good picture about how many high school students and what may buy us a little bit of time in the Eagleville situation there. So as we looked at it and thought about pulling those out, we didn't think that's something we need to do within 2 years or something. So that's why we pushed it on down. That we won't in 2 years need to pull maybe 700 out of Riverdale or Blackman. One of the things about the high schools, you very often, because they're large and you have to rezone so many students, they almost have to get a little bit overcrowded before the economy of it and the zoning makes sense. And those of you who've been at it a while, you know what we're talking about. But it's certainly out there, and wonderful that we've basically got the pads, we've got the land there. So depending upon where growth and how much it is, we can make accommodations there. So again, we'll talk more about this and look at it. Gary, do you want to discuss some of it now? Do you think, do y'all want to talk about it or make some suggestions, and then he's going to show you some other things too that actually fill in pieces of this?
I think we probably go through the schematics and then have a little general discussion afterwards. That might be the best thing to do.
Okay. Mr. Clardy.
So tonight, of course, Joseph has done a lot of design for us over the past 10 years since I've been here, and I think a few buildings before that, but he's with us tonight. And he's done some schematics of all these projects that are on this list. So we're going to ask him to come forward and just go through those schematics and his thoughts on them briefly so we can have a little bit better idea.
Thank you, Mr. Clardy, and good evening to all of you. It's an honor to stand before you again. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity. We've been working for some time on these, and as Mr. Odom identified in that list that was up there, there are a variety of schemes proposed for these. These will follow the order that Mr. Odom just went through in the budget list, and they'll also follow the order that's in the booklet before you. And so as you have opportunity, you may spend more time with those. But I'll move fairly quickly through these, and then can come back to anything I need to and answer any questions you may have. The first was the Smyrna area middle school and elementary school. And this shows on a piece of property the prototypical buildings. Building B at the top is the middle school footprint. Building A at the lower part is the elementary school footprint. And in between would be the athletic fields. And so in an efficient and ideal layout on the same campus, these two schools would share entrance drives, parking areas, so that fields and after-school activities could share parking as well. And then I'll point out two labeled by C on this plan. Up at the rear of the middle school is dashed in a future sixth grade annex, similar to what has been done at Blackman. And so just to make provision for that and make a note for that, that's identified there as well.
The B middle school portion, it's a single-story structure?
It is. And that's a good point, because then the annex in the rear would be a two-story structure, similar to the annex that's been done at Blackman. But the primary structure would be like the other middle schools as a one-story.
Is there any reason for us to originally design and construct a two-story structure at the middle school level, or are we still appropriate to do single-story?
I think it's still appropriate if the availability of land is there. We'll see in just a moment another one where it seems more appropriate to do a two-story due to a little tighter site. And so I think, though, if the site's available, it's still very feasible to do the one-story.
You know, if you'll look at the enrollment of Rock Springs Middle, they grew 50 this year. You know, they're already over 1,000, and that's really continuing to grow. And you look at Smyrna Middle, you look at that growth there, and you see where Stewart's Creek Middle is right now. There's a real need there. I mean, this is going to be, we're going to be overcrowded in those schools before a middle school gets built. That's a real pressure for us to look at. So that's why we're proposing this.
Okay, next is Oakland Middle School sixth grade annex. And this is shown in blue. This is the footprint that is the same as the Blackman annex that has just been occupied. The only difference is we've allocated, labeled by D on this plan, a dining area as a part of this, since this is not attached to the school building. At Blackman, we were able to extend the dining from the existing dining, and then we had the connector to the building. This plan would be proposed on the property where the current athletic fields are. And then, as you'll see there in the plan, the soccer field would stay beyond this building on that side, and then baseball, softball, and athletic building for concessions and restrooms would be across the road on the proposed new piece of property there. But this annex would be a two-story building, approximately 70,000 square feet. I'll move through these fairly quickly. These slides show a little bit more detail, but this is for Laverne and Smyrna high schools, and for stadium expansions on the visitor side and the addition of the prototypical restroom and concessions building and ticket booth for both schools. So the components for both are the same. The locations are a little bit different on the concessions building due to the existing layout of each of those stadiums. You can see on the visitor side would be extending seat. Right now there's one narrow, tall section of visitor seating on Laverne and Smyrna on the visitor side. This would be expanding that in both directions to add seating. And you probably recall that last year we added ADA seating and ramps to these stadiums, to both of these. This would be infill of the remainder of the bleacher seating and then the concessions building. So here at Laverne is the concession building. Bleachers at Laverne in a little more detail. And there's the building and ticket booth. So this is on the home side. At Smyrna, and here's the site, the concessions building and new service drive is as you enter the football complex. There's a athletic building here in place where the old restrooms are currently on this end, locker rooms and so forth, home side, grandstand here, and then in similar fashion to Laverne, the extension in between the light poles of the two sections of visitor bleachers. There they are in a little more detail in the concession building. Now we move to Roy Waldron. So you see the overall plan here. In the rear would be a proposed two-story classroom expansion. This is about 26,000 square feet. And then in the current lobby of the gymnasium, it would be an addition or a renovation to make that a stage area for the gym. This shows you the first floor of the classrooms, and then over here the stage addition, and then the second floor for the tie-in back there with a 15 classroom addition. David Urey, and that's, as Mr. Odom mentioned, a bit unusual as you have to go through the entry through the cafeteria to get to the office, and so there's sort of a makeshift security checkpoint as you go into the building currently. This proposal would add administrative offices to the front of the building. Let's see if I can get the light there. Right here. So we could set up with a canopy a control vestibule where visitors must go into the office to check in, and then in a secure fashion be able to enter the building. And then renovations for teacher dining, teacher work area, and so forth. A little help for the library in what is now the offices back in the middle of the building.
The teacher work areas, when I was there the other day, have been turned into intervention spaces and all too, with our intervention, all the RTI and all, we're working in those, what used to be teacher work areas.
And the difference between this one and Cedar Grove and Rockville Elementary, at least those have line of sight to the front door. David Urey has no line of sight because of the commons area.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Okay, here's John Coleman. This is interesting. The existing building is shown dashed there with E and D. And so the proposal would be to take down that building, which has, let's say, served its useful life, and maintain what is shown in F, which is the gym playroom area. Keep that in place. And then build the new elementary school on the property that's out in front there. And what is shown here, and here's the footprint on a little tighter site where the majority of this building could be a two-story structure, and then spaces such as dining, administration, library, kindergarten on this end would be one-story portions of that building, but the an efficient layout for classrooms would be stacked in a two-story fashion in the middle of that building. So what is shown in this footprint with the two stories, about 130,000 square foot school, which is the same square footage as our current new elementary schools. Siegel High School, you'll see out on the one wing, the addition of 12 classrooms. So this extends the wing on both floors. This is two-story portion of the building with 6 classrooms down, 6 classrooms up. It's about 15,000 square feet of addition. And so the existing building configuration, metal roof and so forth, would be just simply extended. The stair would be replaced with a new stair at the end once that addition was made. And finally, Laverne Middle, existing building shown in gray there, and then a proposed classroom wing, about 24,000 square feet. This area of the site is all fairly level and would be easy to extend this main corridor with a double-loaded corridor of classrooms, a parking and drive area to accommodate that, and a fairly simple one-story addition to the existing building there. So circulation and drives work the same way, classroom layouts, and then the other support spaces within that, teacher work areas and restrooms, would be a part of that addition as well.
How many classrooms?
We haven't landed on a number of classrooms. This would be about 20, but it would depend on if science labs were put in there or if they were regular classrooms. There's a little bit of flexibility in terms of number of classrooms there. Okay, we're ready for the next slide. Any other questions? I'd be happy to answer.
What is, Mr. Clardy, this is really more a question for you, but since we've gone through these, I know we would go back in with aluminum bleachers at Laverne and Smyrna in the add-on area, but give us a feeling for the current status and state of repair of the concrete bleachers that are there. There are some areas that look like we've made some repairs, and I'm sure that those are completely safe, but over the long term, if we're going to take that much investment over there, is there any case for taking the concrete out and putting in all aluminum?
The current bleachers are in really decent, good shape at Smyrna High School. In Laverne High School, there's a couple of areas that have been reinforced and shored up with steel plates and I-beams. And they're currently very stable. They're in good shape. These bleachers and things have been on our program for 5 or 6 years now. And it's very difficult to get them funded. So we have tried to work at a minimum of what the requirements are to try to get the things funded. So it's very difficult to get enough dollars to do a lot. So I think that we would be probably best to stick with what we've got, and then if we want to do something at a later date to them, then replace the other bleachers. And I just want to say about all of the things that you've just seen, these things are not carved in stone. If you have some better ideas, for instance, David Urey, we're covered up with portables up there now, so probably this has been on the program for several years now, and the portables have backed up there, so it's a possibility that we may need to move on another area of the campus and put up a 2-story section of classrooms to get rid of some of those portables out there. So there's all kind of things that we can do, and if you have some ideas or anything, I'd be glad to hear them. Down to moving to a 2-story building on all the middle and elementary schools. And
New elementary that we're proposing could also help David Uris in close proximity, it would
Right.
open up some of the area that they serve now. So, I mean, that's another way.
Yes. So, you know, if there's any further discussion, would like to hear it, or I don't know what you want to do about the way we have the building program laid out, but it's an ever-changing proposition. By the time we get ready to go ask for funding, something might have changed that we need to do differently, so.
One thought that just crosses my mind, that at John Coleman there, I love the idea of a new facility in place of John Coleman, and yet the you know, keeping a presence there as a school. I'm certainly acknowledging the density issues that are happening on Sam Ridley with apartment housing and the impact that it has with elementary. But it does also give us an opportunity, if we're building something brand new and we're building something two-story, that we could replicate or introduce another magnet opportunity that might have multiple grades that may extend beyond a typical format of, K through 5 and 6 through 8 and et cetera, but a magnet opportunity there in a two-story structure that could be state-of-the-art and specific purpose.
Yes, and also at John Coleman, we're not locked into tearing the old building down. For instance, if we needed to put hands-on science and clear out some space out at Wilson, Walter Hill, then we could possibly do that, maybe take part of it out and use some of the building, shore it up a little bit and do some work on it and use it for something, or perhaps make offices or any of that for staff. So as we get a little bit closer to those things, it's always a moving target. There's many things that we can do to enhance our programs.
The industrial nature around John Coleman with the airport and the National Guard and those kind of surrounding facilities make it a little bit of a unique property, and it could be a northern dispatch spot for maintenance or something of that nature.
Right.
And this is such a critical time to make these plans that we certainly would want to take these home with us and continue to look at them and make sure that, we make the very best decision possible. And like I said, we may be jumbling up a few of them.
Maybe moving them around to meet the needs in areas that reach a priority level.
I think we've been doing that for the last several years.
We have. It's a chess game, but one of the main things that we have to deal with is funding, and of course y'all hear me say that all the time, but you can't build them without money, and the people just keep coming and coming. So if we want our education level to stay where it is and maintain it and improve it, we've got to build seats for students.
I have no particular problem with the order, but I am curious, because that's going to determine what we eventually approve and ask for funding for. But the order that they're in here, who decided that order right there? And I don't understand. I have no argument with anything on that.
We all sit down together. I think on these, Jeff Sandvig actually does the computer work on them. We sat down with Mr. Odom, myself, of course, Richard's group out of instruction furnished some numbers and things when we're looking. Richard's been in on some of the meetings. I don't think he is in on this particular meeting, but he's had some input down, Mr. Zago, down through the times that it goes. But this is the best picture that staff has right now at this point of what we need to do. And I was discussing with Mr. Zago today. He's very concerned because he sees the number of students every day. So we've got to keep building places to seat these students that keep coming. We had 1,200 new students last year, I think. We got 700 this year. So that is 2 new 1,000-seat schools that we didn't build the last 2 years.
Well, I think my point is obvious. The 7 of us, I think we're pretty, we're all right. But I look at it as a staff's responsibility to tell us, in their opinion, and they're the experts, where the most critical needs are. And then we need to address them one by one. I think that's pretty obvious. I think. And I'm not sure. The only thing I thought of when I saw this, I'm skipping over the land now, the first 2 things on your list, which I hope we're going to discuss here in just a minute, but at some point. But the Siegel High edition, I had, 2018 sounds like to me a long time away. And that was just my first impression, understand? But other board members may have other ideas.
Well, actually, Siegel has decreased a little bit recently.
Magnet school affected them quite a bit.
So, and the property for Oakland and Eagleville, those properties, I just received those appraisals 5 minutes before I came in here, and I really haven't had time to review them. So I'd like a chance to look at them good before our meeting on Saturday, and then we can discuss that on Saturday as we're traveling between the properties we're going to review.
Well, as you may remember, I think the number one comment that was made on Stewart's Creek and Rockvale high schools, you made it, and I thought it was. I hate to say this publicly, but I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and it sold it, and it was absolutely true. And what you said was that if we built Rockvale right now, and you were talking about 3 years ago, we'd still need Siegel the next year. But if we built, Stewart's Creek the next year. But if we built Stewart's Creek, we wouldn't need Rockvale immediately. And I thought that was an excellent point, and that really carried a lot of weight with that commission. And sure enough, here we are now, 3 years later. And do we need Rockvale? Sure. Do we need it any worse than we needed it 3 years ago? No. So you were right. And that's the kind of advice that I need.
Well, we're definitely not going to solve the problem by not building. I can say that.
One thing I'd like to caution us on is on elementary schools. Are we ready for 2-story elementary schools? I know middle schools and high schools, I can understand it, but from a safety standpoint, trying to get elementary kids from a 2nd story down to the ground level, is that something we think we can do safely, or?
Well, we haven't really studied that yet, but I know there's a lot of different municipalities and entities that are doing that. And they handle that by building large inside stairwells. And the elevators, of course, during emergency, you can't use them anyway, but the elevators are mainly for ADA purposes, to move equipment and students that are not able to take the stairs up and down between the floors. So if you put the required life safety openings in the building between the floors, and then add more than that, and actually the first floor becomes much safer with the 2nd floor over it than it does if it's just a single floor. So from that perspective, it could be safer if you get the kids down there where they need to go. If you're alerted in time and you don't hesitate, but go ahead and move the children ahead of time, you can solve a lot of those issues.
Does it make sense to have a 2-story elementary if we're going to stay with the 1,000-seat elementary? I mean, we've been forced to move to the $1,500 student middle schools because of the expansion. I mean, something that we're going to have to consider is, do we want to expand the elementary the same way we've had to expand the middle school?
I think that would be a question for instruction.
For the safety of the students, for a two-story building that was appropriately sized, because you would mostly put your younger students on the first floor and your older students, third, fourth, and fifth graders on the second floor. They would be more capable of navigating the steps and those other types of things. But when we get to 1,500 students, it would start to concern me a little bit with that number of students that tend to wander around if they're not extremely kept up with.
So would it be cost effective to do a two-story elementary with 1,000 students?
I think it would. I mean, you just have to compare the property cost to the cost of going up. Of course, you have a lot less roof space on a two-story building, so, but you have associated cost of all the scaffolding and those things to get the masonry up higher. We would just have to do a comparison, but they may actually compare out, or it may be a little bit higher. I'm not sure.
What would be the approximate savings of going to 2 stories over stretching out? I know you can't tell us exactly, but if we went to a 2-story building, how much cheaper is the second floor?
The second floor would probably be, this is just shot in the dark, maybe 10-15%, but a lot of it weighs by how much the property costs. If the property is real expensive, you're better off going up. If the property's cheap, you're usually better off going with a single story. But there's some things, Mr. St. Clair could probably address this when he's up, but you get less roof area, that's less maintenance in that area. And you have to be very careful about putting masonry above another roof area because it becomes a water trap. So it's pretty complex to get into those things, and you just have to build them stick by stick on paper and see what they cost. So, and we could do that. Joseph, thank you. I'll take the pointer unless you got something.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would just like to take the opportunity to say that we've had a very good team here in the construction for the and maintenance for the last several years. Mr. Binkley's been a very valuable part of that. Our project managers, Trey Lee and Brian Yarbrough, have been a valuable part. And then our inspectors, Mr. Ed Seiler, who is disabled now, and then Mr. Sinclair, our roofing inspector, have been a very valuable part of that team, and we've addressed a lot of different issues over the years that no longer plague the system as they once did. Also, on our consulting team now, we have Mr. Ron Graham with us, who is helping us on our energy, and he has a report a little bit later on, and I think you'll be interested in seeing how that program's progressing and how we're getting some savings. We're getting to the point now that we can actually count some dollars. And okay, I'm sorry.
I just want to recognize again Mr. Binkley last year, the award we got down in Nashville for convention for design of Stewart Creek High School.
We won first place on that, didn't we? And we've been very fortunate that we have all these places around us that are building schools that cost a lot more money, that that are more expensive in their design, but our schools are very practical. They're very, the cost is a lot less than what some of the other schools are building. And we, over the years, Mr. Binkley has designed schools that we can put up beside these other schools throughout the state, and we win. We've had multiple, 6 or 7 different awards at the state level over the past several years. So we're very proud of that, and we are proud of Joseph and his team, and we're glad that it's something that the board can help us celebrate when they win at that state board level like that.
May I ask Mr. Binkley a question, or are you, Mr. Clardy, on the Oakland Middle School 6th grade annex there? On this plan, the idea is to put E, which is the 6th grade annex, where the baseball field is now, and I would assume also the practice football field is there. It's immediate after you walk out of the gym, after the parking lot, and then the practice field, then the baseball field, and then the softball field. You're going to move all of that to the other side of the road if that in fact takes place. Is that, am I doing that right?
Well, that's right. The practice football and soccer field would remain on that side just beyond the annex, if you'll see that block, that
Yes.
rectangular block there.
Okay.
Baseball and softball moving across the road.
You don't do bleachers.
Not on these.
Okay, but that's not his responsibility.
Well, we
Restrooms, concession stands, fields, fences, so forth, but
normally let the parents do that in the clubs now, but they have those on the other side, so we would possibly move those, relocate those that they've already purchased in this case. What we want to do is, we know there's been a lot of hard work go into those with the clubs and the parents, as Mrs. Moore pointed out earlier. So we want to give them at least the same quality of field that they have now, and even raise that just a little bit as we, can afford it.
well, I heard Ms. Moore's comments earlier, and she's a baseball enthusiast, as am I, but she has children involved, not there, but elsewhere. And I agree with you. If the Booster Club did a lot of work to put in some stuff, and we need to reward them for that. But also, my point is that the softball field does not have, it's a long hike to find a bathroom. There's no parking except for the grass parking, unless you want to, again, walk a long way. And there are no bleachers, incredibly, there's no bleachers at all. There's no place for a fan to sit at the Oakland softball field. You and I discussed this earlier, I think, on a trip out there, maybe this summer. So I just want to be sure that happens. If we're going to move across the road, I'm sure we're going to do it right. I'm just making that point publicly.
Okay, we'll take that and do what we can with it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Binkley. I'm sorry, I didn't know whether to address that now, because we got to go back and talk about the land here eventually at some point, and then of course it's all connected. Thank you, Mr. Clark.
If we have any other discussion on this issue, and I would prefer, and when you say go back, you mean it may be a later meeting when
Well, just whatever you
okay.
is appropriate.
Because I want to study these appraisals and just make sure that
Understood.
we have a couple of different issues here that have come up in the last few days, and this is the City of Murfreesboro DeJarnette Lane pump easement. And the city of Murfreesboro is upgrading the sewer pumping station located at the intersection of DeJarnette Lane, Rutherford County property, and the Hutchinson property across DeJarnette Lane from the Oakland High School football stadium. Now, that was on the original piece of property, and it's across the road from the stadium. There's 1,810 square feet of property at $526. That is a fee simple purchase that the city needs for a permanent pipeline easement. And fee simple means it's just an absolute sale. They will own the property afterward. And then there is a permanent easement, and then there's 4,988 square feet for a temporary construction easement at $144 for a total of $670. And that construction easement will maintain the ownership of that, and they will move off of it as soon as construction is complete. The property is of little or no value to Rutherford County Schools, and it's part of the original track for Oakland High School that's cut off by DeJarnette Lane from the main campus. And I'll just quickly show you that. Do you have something, Mr.?
And this is property that the city needs,
Yes.
and what do we pay for building permits and other fees, of course? I mean, I'm just wondering aloud.
I feel your pain.
I had the same conversation.
Okay.
You can see the park property, it's hashed out here. Part of that is a construction easement, and then the other part is the permanent pipeline easement. And these are just the papers that we will have to forward on to Mr. Reed. Any discussion on that, or you want to hear them?
Something you're going to want us to do tonight?
Yeah, we'd like to approve this. And would you like me to read the motion now, or you want some discussion on it?
Let's see if there's any discussion from the board before.
Go back to the maps. What are we going to be left with still on that side of the road?
Well, you can see here it says the remaining property.
I see that now.
And then actually that part of that hash will go also return back. And so we'll have, you can see where the city's cut out there, so we'll have a little bit of a piece. Let me go back one more. You can see that corner there, and that's what we own right in through there. That whole, you can see where the line crosses DeJarnette and then goes back out to all the way around the property, the pumping station, back to DeJarnette.
What's the current zoning of that property? Pardon me for
I don't know.
hitting you off guard there with something.
I don't know
Here's
what it
my-
is. I'm sure it's probably agricultural, like the rest of it is around here.
It looks to me to be surplus property that we'll never use for any school purpose. And if we could leverage a zone change in this transaction that would make that property more marketable, that would be beneficial.
Well, I'm willing to try it, but Mr. Reed might want to comment on that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how much acreage is going to be left there, so whether it's going to have any commercial viable use or not, I'm not sure. I don't know if Mr. Clardy knows or not. So I guess that's the question, ultimately, whether there's any commercial use to the remaining portion of it. And it's a pretty narrow track.
It's pretty rough in there, it's got a creek, of course, that you can barely make out there, but it goes through the whole thing. I can't imagine that property being very worthwhile for anything, but I've been fooled before.
If that's the case, then is there a possibility of forcing the city's hand to take the whole thing and get more value? Just
Might be able to give it to them. It's pretty funky down in there when you get off of the side, particularly with the sewer pump station in the middle of it,
Yeah.
that's vented in the area. So there might be a possibility that whoever gets the Hutchinson property, that it could possibly go with it. Might be able to let them have it, but I'll be willing to do whatever the board's, but I do think we need to get this moving so that we just don't get into any, I can ask the questions, we don't want to get into them having to condemn it and
Oh, yeah.
go into all of that.
You could
stuff.
always come back and deal with that remainder property later and do what you want to do at that point.
If we got the city over a barrel, you know, I just thought maybe, but maybe they have us over a barrel. I don't know which way that plays, but. Okay, motion.
Are you reading it, Mr. Odom, or is Mr. Clardy?
You want me to read?
Please.
Motion to approve the sale of easements on the property for the DeJarnette Pump Station to the City of Murfreesboro at a price of $670 as presented. Jeff Reed, School Board Attorney, will forward the appropriate papers to the county mayor for appropriate subcommittees and completion of the transaction.
You've heard the motion. Mr. Hodge? Second by Mr. Young. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
We have an Eagleville High School sewer connection. Rutherford Utility Company, LLC, RUC, has submitted a proposal for design and installation of a 25,000-gallon two-compartment traffic-rated tank and pumps. Design for this system will be furnished by SEC and RUC included in this proposal. The cost for the proposal is $149,000. And this goes down, I don't have the drawings where it goes, but it goes down where the current the current plant is that we have that has all the odor to it. It will be in the ground. It will have two pumps that are working out of that. It'll pump down to the EMS building where their current tap is on the other edge of our property down there, and pump all the way out to the new sewer plant. So we've been working this for a long time. The same company that did the sewer plant out there and installed everything and designed it. So we've had this money set aside for some time.
At the end of this process, does it free up any land that's currently in use?
It might free up a 24 by 60 area that is currently, we're going to have to fill in those old tanks and things and clean that up good. But it is, we only have two sewer systems left that are not managed by someone other than us, and that one of them is at Buchanan and the other one is at Eagleville. So we've worked hard over the last few years to get those old systems out, turn them over to the utility company, CUD, and those are the only two that are left now. So this will solve one of the problems, and this is more reasonable than putting our own system in again and tying up property.
Going to solve considerable problem for the city of Eagleville and for Eagleville High School in particular.
Yes,
School.
particularly the football games where they have the serious odor smell and those
Oh, well, I
types of
know.
things.
And that plant's an eyesore too. You ready for the motion? Mr. Clardy?
Motion to approve the proposal for the Eagleville High School design tank pump in the amount of $149,000 by Rutherford Utility Company LLC as presented.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jordan, seconded by Mr. Holliday. Any further discussion by the board? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, we're going to look at some current projects that we are working on now, and I've got some pictures to show you. The Eagleville School Phase 1. We currently have the playground relocated. We have access to the loading dock at the kitchen, and the utilities are pretty much relocated, and we're moving on with the concrete blocks. Now the slabs are pretty much done. As you can see, the slab. And we move on to where the walls are going up. More walls. So we're trying to get this thing under roof before the weather gets really bad. You can see the progress that we're making there. And then we're going to move over to Smyrna Primary Edition, and they're in the final stages of the punch list and those types of things. And I believe some of you gentlemen have been up. I don't know if any ladies have, but I know the gentlemen have, and got a tour by some of their honor students. And
They're very happy to show it off at any opportunity. So if you did get to visit with the tour, they'd love to get to show you.
it's a beautiful building. It really turned out nice. And you can see the new canopy out front. This is the media center. One of the computer labs. That's the new media center on the inside. That's about 10 times as big as the other one was. This is the outside of the classroom area. It's a new CAF. And down the hallway in the new wing. One of the classrooms. Looks like they're using them well. This is the teacher workroom, I think, or classroom at the work area in the classroom. And then the Blackman Middle School edition, we're just about to wrap that up. They had a final walkthrough today on that. And they're working a punch list. There's the entry in front. There's one of the restrooms. Of course, it was raining that day, so things had kind of stopped on the outside. One of the computer labs. That is down the entry side. One of the hallways on the first floor there. Looks like I got that one in there twice. I was paid to put that big B in there twice tonight, so. One of the conference rooms, and then the assistant principal's office. Again, outside on the other side, on the back side. You have any statements or anything you'd like to say about that? Any of those?
Gorgeous.
Thank you. We, as I said, we have a couple of great project managers. They're seasoned construction people, and we get a lot of work done with them. Capital improvements, 2014 and 15. These are what we're doing, and Mr. Sinclair is here, of course, and he's going to discuss roofing with us in a little bit. but you can see what we have on the schedule for this year. Smyrna Primary School, Thurman Francis Arts, Oakland High School, L&O Annex, Blackman High School, and the Buchanan Elementary School. As you recall, we had problems with the Oakland High School, Thurman Francis Academy, and Smyrna Primary. Those are old coal tar roofs, and the Thurman Francis was the worst, with the most damage on it, and they're stocking that now. They have the material ordered. They're getting revved up to get ready to get on that thing and finish. We've kind of waited it out, the weather a little bit, so that we have cold enough weather to get the old roof off and clean it up so it's not hot and melty and just such a mess. The Oakland High School is 50%, and then the Blackman is just about complete. We like just a few odds and ends on it. And then I have $90,000 in there for controls at Blackman Middle School. And you will see how important those are once we start looking at the energy savings we're getting. And that's for a total of $2.35 million in capital improvements this year.
Any money left?
No, but I'm willing to ask for some if you'd like me to.
I think that may be in the plan. And those other ones that are critical needs right now, they just had to be moved to the forefront because they're...
That's correct. And we're trying to get rid of those types of roofs. And Mr. Sinclair can go in that. It's kind of a couple steps up and a step back, and a couple steps up and a step back. So as the roofs are coming due to be out of warranty and be repaired. Blackman High School re-roof. I just want to say that this is what I'm getting ready to show you, what a good roof is supposed to look like, what a good roofing job is. And this is done by Pinnacle Roofing. It's just so clean and just really an excellent job. All the seams are, sealed and caulked. Just very good. And those wrinkles there are in the screen that's on the wall, not in the roof. And as I said, the Thurman Francis Art Academy re-roof we're in the process now of mobilizing on that. And at this time, I want to bring Mr. Sinclair forward, and he's been here for over 10 years. He's been here with me the entire time that I've been here, and he's done an excellent job. He really keeps us up on the info, and as you can recall, in our strategic plan, we were calling for $3.4 million per year to kind of get caught up on our roof, as opposed to the 2.2 that we're currently spending. So that's 1.2 million that we're needing, and he can kind of go through that with you and let you know what shape we're in. Mr. Sinclair, come on up.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I know some of you, but I don't know all of you. I was hired by Rutherford County in 1999 to oversee all of their roofs, new roofs that were going on, and all of the re-roofing that was going on to keep inspections up on them as the contractors worked on the roofs. At the time that I took over, almost every one of the 30 schools we had at that time was leaking in some form. At this date, we hardly have any schools that are leaking because we manage to stay up on top of them through a program, a maintenance program that has started. And the way it works is I go out and do the inspections. During the inspections, I take pictures of everything that's wrong. I submit that report to Brian Yarbrough, the project manager for that area. He then issues a work order on it. That work order goes to Pinnacle Building Service or to maintenance or to housekeeping or whatever that we see that's going on. Within about 48 hours, the work order is completed. An email has tracked all of that through, and it goes back to Brian. I look at it. The next time I go out, which is twice a year, I inspect over 8 million square feet of roofing. So that's 16 million square feet of roofing that I inspect for the county in 1 year. In addition, we are now inspecting portables, and just as something that I was doing, we have now started categorizing all of your auxiliary buildings. Right now, with 2 schools left, you have 153 auxiliary buildings that are out there, existing from small storage buildings to sports where they batting cages to indoor sports areas, press boxes, dugouts. All of this has roofing on it, and it all has an impact on the county in the way, you're going to have to allocate some funds as these things have been really increasing over the last 10 years. We thought it'd be a good job. I still have 2 schools left, and at that time, I'll present Mr. Clardy with a detailed report broken down by classification so you can get a good idea of what's going on. Like I said, some of the roofs are in bad shape right now and doesn't even pertain to what I'm fixing to get into. When I came on board, there was about $14 million that was allocated for re-roofing over a 5-year period. And that was because of what I talked about earlier, where they were all leaking. The architect at that time designed 2 systems. He designed a coal tar pitch, and he designed a modified bitumen roof. The coal tar pitch roofs are failing. But the problem we have here is that the manufacturer went out of business, Honeywell. So you're no longer able to go back against anybody on these roofs that you're talking about. They don't exist anymore. The other problem with the coal tar pitch is you no longer can repair them with a hot kettle. Most of you would be familiar with a hot kettle and the smell of coal tar on roofs. Well, you can't do that anymore because the EPA and CDC have both considers it now a carcinogen to smell it. We cannot put any sort of hot material around us students. So in order to repair that, that is the only way you can do it. I researched looking at the number of lawsuits that have been all across the nation, and I come to the conclusion there's nothing we can do but tear them off. That is why when you're looking at the 2014-15 cost, you can see the number of roofs that we have, and most of those are either coal tar pitch or out of warranty and have been out of warranty for some time. Back in 2001, I came before the board and I explained that we would need $2.1 million to keep up with the 30 roofs that we had at that time. you need to be replacing right at 3 roofs now every year that go out of warranty, or you're going to be facing, as we are again, if you push this back again, as we keep pushing it back and pushing it back, you're going to be faced with the same thing the previous board was faced with, and you're going to have a large outlay all at one time. The problem that I see for y'all is that every time we have a problem with our roofs and they start leaking, as we did last year at Thurman Francis, where it split wide open, it's going to result in your academic space being compromised. And if you're so tight on space, where are you going to put these kids when, if the cafeteria is being used and the gym's being used and everything else, and all your portables are tied up, where are you going to put them? So it's sort of like the other thing that you need to consider is doing away with accepting any warranties. And you're going to say, why do that? We don't get anything out of it. Take the warranty money that you're paying every time we build a new school, and during that year, use that warranty money to make your repairs on the schools as you're going. Right now, repairs come out of your budget, and that would be an additional savings there. And you'd say, I know you got to be looking at me like I'm crazy to say don't accept the warranties. But the warranties, again, only pay you in the event that they've got to come in and tear off the roof. They don't pay to tear it off. They don't pay to put it back. They only pay you for your materials. All they do is put it at the doorstep, so to speak, and that's all we get. Second issue is they pay for no consequential damages. So if the roof splits like it did at Thurman Francis and the library's wet, so my suggestion is to take what the state allows, which is 2 years. That gives us 4 thermal cycles that the roofs will go through. And by that time, we're going to know if the roofs are going to hold up, and then we can go back against the contractor. Right now, it's awful hard because what the warranty company say to you is that the quality of work by the roofer didn't match up to their standards, therefore it's a roofing problem. Therefore it's a contractor problem and they're not responsible. On the other hand, the contractor would tell you that the products are bad. And if you do any research at all, you'll find that roughly 77% of all construction lawsuits are a result of the roof. Of that 77%, only 53% are ever in favor of the plaintiff. You're going to lose most of the time. This is a very realistic number, and I know it's hard to think about spending $3.7 million a year on roofing. But if you don't, it's going to come back to haunt you. And the county commission needs to know that. Everybody needs to know it. We need to stay on top of it. We don't have complaints on the roofs that are being re-roofed. You saw a picture here. And you might have saw all those little dimples in it. Every one of those dimples is a screw going down to hold the insulation in place. The company that does it, Pinnacle Building Services, and through our inspection, we don't allow any of those screws not to meet the deck. So they have to pull them back out and move them. Every one of those on a 20, I did not find a single one on 25,000 square feet of inspection the other day, the last 2 times. We're using white EPDM rubber, and that's what I recommend that we use on all of our roofs. That it provides us again with energy savings. It's just the best product out there right now. But the key factor is very quick and easy to repair. It doesn't take kettles and all the other stuff for asphalt or anything. One man can repair most problems that result in EPDM. One of the things I have to compliment Mr. Clardy on is that every time you build a 2-story building, you reduce your liability on your roof space. Another thing, since I've been here, I worked with Mr. Binkley before when he was at Gould Turner. We recommended to Gould Turner that there be no brick above a roof line. And since that time, we have it. We also put in place, since Mr. Binkley is now doing the roofs, that all roofs slope. That every roof slopes and goes to a gutter. We have no more internal drains. Internal drains contract and expand, and they pull apart from their couplings. That's what, if you notice the leak here, there was a leak here where it was a coupling. It kept moving. And ultimately, we had to cut it out, put a new coupling in, and get it so it was very tight so it could move and separate. Those are the kind of things that I look at on every time I go out on the roof to make sure that the academic space, the integrity of the academic space is maintained so that the county doesn't have to worry about it. But ladies and gentlemen, please look at these numbers that I provided. We did this last February. We know that budget time's coming up before the county commission. We know that you need to be talking to them about what it's going to cost now, because we've gone from 30 schools when I started to 45 plus the central office and the maintenance building.
Ask a few questions.
Ma'am?
And I may be getting ahead of you here. I don't know if you were wrapping up or not, but I'll be the first to admit that construction is not my forte. But just in listening to this, one of my questions is, first of all, on the warranties that you're referring to and turning those down, I assume that that means then that those are optional, that it's something that the system does not have to purchase. Can you give us an idea of what kind of dollars we're talking about that we would save by not purchasing those warranties?
Yes, ma'am, between $32,000 and $40,000 per school.
I'm sorry, per school?
For every new school that we're building.
Okay, so that would only really be applicable to new school construction,
Yes,
then,
ma'am.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The difference between the new schools is on the re-roofing with Pinnacle Building Services. You're not only getting product warranty, you're getting a workmanship warranty. So if anything does develop, he comes out and fixes it, there's no question. We don't have to worry about calling somebody out of town who, he's here local, he does it, and you can check the work orders, that's how he responds. And so therefore, he does it for the benefit of the county because that's what he gets paid to do.
Right.
And then I inspect his work.
And I can certainly, I can understand the sense that this makes too in terms of protecting yourself from other liabilities, certainly. But at the end of the day, I mean, $20 million, even over 7 years, is a lot of money. I'm just curious if has there been any kind of an actual, like, risk analysis done that would actually kind of show what the potential liability out there could be if this work is not done?
Well, if I looked at it the way I have looked at it over the last 15 years building schools, we have been able to collect $15,000. It's all we've collected. We collected that on Eagleville High School. Oakland, when I first started working here, Oakland itself was having a problem. We had a problem with the contractor through the whole process. At that time, we kept begging him, looking at everything, rejecting it, but it kept getting approved. In the end, after 4.5 years, we talked to everybody about the possibility of taking the contractor to court, and the statute of limitation had run on the contractor, I believe. And at that time also, the manufacturer came in and said everything was wrong. We knew it was wrong. We continued to pay, and so therefore we paid him for a warranty that meant absolutely nothing. And we continued to do that at all the schools. I think that the liability, it would be much better to take your 2 years and hold only the roofing contractor to everything that's wrong. And within 2 years, you're going to know if it's bad or good.
Thank you.
You mentioned your analysis of the coal tar pitch roof, said that it is non-repairable, and because of the carcinogens and such. I noticed in your language, because we can't expose the children to that. Is that to say that other commercial structures that don't involve minors are not held to that standard, or is this a industry-wide?
It's an industry-wide. All of the major manufacturers have gone out of business.
Okay.
Mainly it was Honeywell and Koppers, which was out of the Northeast. They're no longer in business. There's a modified coal tar roof that has been applied on some roofs throughout the nation, but in looking at it, there have been many school districts sued for just putting a roof that created a smell. Now, you'd say, well, putting a rubber roof on, there's a smell also, right? Well, every time we start a job, we make sure that the MSDS sheets, which is what the EPA and everybody look at, is made available to Brian Yarbrough gets a copy. There's a booklet that's put together, and the principals get a copy. So far on the number of roofs that we've done, we've not had a problem because the glue that's used dissipates very quickly. Coal tar doesn't. But right now, you know, there's a coal tar trust for black lung disease and everything else to take care of the miners who have developed black lung disease. Roofers have started developing it too. And some of that was because as the quality of the tar became less and less, they were able to get more and more fumes into their body. And again, about midway through this of last time when we had so many roofs and they were putting coal tar on it, they had to stop and go to the modified, which is the asphalt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've made a lot of progress. Thank you, Mr. Sinclair. We've made a lot of progress on those roofs, and I hope that y'all will help us to get what's still hanging out under control and get them some of those problems resolved. Mr. Ron Graham is here to discuss energy management, and our energy manager, Jeff Stacy's here. I don't know if you've met him or not, but he's handling that from an office over in the maintenance building. So, Mr. Graham, we want to kind of hear about the program and hear if we're saving any money or not.
Realize I'm probably between you and your families and dinner, and I'll try to keep this very, very brief. I appreciate the opportunity to come back before the board. I was here about a year and a half ago. We started this project, and you adopted a energy conservation policy at the board. I think that was a very wise decision. I applaud the board for that. You had actually got a grant of about $160,000, and that moved you forward. You were able to, hire an energy manager to have a full-time person on staff focused on energy management. We also were able to provide some other opportunities for you within the district. And what's important in all this is really trying to look at opportunities to save the district resources, improve the facilities, and improve the learning environment. So everything we're doing is trying to look at the learning environment as our highest priority. And that's what your policy said. That's what we're trying to make sure that's accomplished. I appreciate being a part of Gary's team as well. I think Gary's got the district's best interest at heart, and that's what I'm trying to do as well. I've given you a copy of the report. So basically, I want you to, take your time at some point, read this report, and look through the graphs, kind of go through the attachments and see how this all relates. But just know what we're trying to do is we're trying to track your energy use. We have certain schools that we piloted and gathered real-time energy data, because waiting till you get the data from the utility company, a lot of times you miss opportunities to see how you can actually save money. What we did with gathering all this data, doing the audits that we did on certain schools, is we really developed an action plan. That's kind of in attachment 8 to try to get us through what are some opportunities that exist in the district to improve energy. So you can look through attachment 1. It's got different lighting and HVAC and control technology recommendations, but that's what's going on in that attachment. Attachment 2 is the next attachment after that. What we did, we took every school in the district and we loaded on a free federal database that we also reported to the Department of Education that gives you an Energy Star score. And this gives you a score that's related to every other school district in the country that's on this data. What we can see is it's a 0 to 100 scale. If you're at a 75, which is called an Energy Star school, you're better than 75% of all the other schools in the country on the database with regards to the energy use per square foot in your facility. So we actually are tracking all this data, and what we really found in your schools, between getting the attention on energy management, Jeff going about a lot of the control work that he's been doing to try to control the energy in the schools, and some of the behavior changes that have been made, is almost every one of your schools improved its Energy Star score. This is all just data, utility data loaded from the district, put in the database, and between 2013, the end of 2013 to the end of 2014 school years, almost every school in the district had an improvement. So that just shows you a direction we're heading. I've got an attachment I may not have actually should have included, but we do track all this by what we call KBTU, 1,000 BTUs, where we can take the kilowatt hours and the BTUs in natural gas and kind of combine all this data and see on a square foot basis how much energy is your school using on a square foot basis, and then we weather normalize this data. Because a lot of times you can say, well, we saved money this year because we had a warmer winter than last year, or we had a cooler summer, or whatever. Well, when you put all this data in the system, it actually takes all that into account, and it weather normalizes the data. So what we get is an actual true representation of what the energy use is actually in the facility. So these are, energy spent on lighting the facility, energy spent on heating and cooling the facility, and we'll take that into account as far as what the weather is and all those kind of things. So that's what that was. But the bottom line is we saved about 12 million KBTUs in the district in between those 2 years. And then at the end of the presentation, we did do a pilot where we got this real-time energy data, actual, every 5-minute data on the electric use, and that program again generates a lot of reporting. What we really are finding is, overall in the district in those 6 pilot schools, we saved about 10% in energy use from electricity over that last year period from October to October. And what that relates to is we've got these 6 schools plotted in their kilowatt hour per use. So now we can actually start looking at the trends and compare where we are, this year to where we were last year. And that allows you to see where we have any improvements that need to be made. Every school is going to be different as far as you're going to have equipment that starts drifting. You're adding, floor space. You're changing the use of certain facilities. All these things have an effect on the school, as well as all the behaviors. But what Jeff's been able to accomplish in some of these schools are shown like in attachment 6 in Blackman Elementary, where he looks at the operation of all the HVAC equipment is controlled, and so it tells the equipment, when to come on and when to go off. And what happens in a lot of these schools, we found out, and Jeff found out, that all the equipment was coming on at 5 o'clock in the morning and not going off till 11 o'clock at night. And the teachers had individual control of the thermostat, so they may be setting these thermostats at 72 degrees during the winter, and it was running from 5 a.m. all the way to 11 p.m. So what we're trying to do is go back and adjust these schedules so we don't impact at all the learning environment comfort. We're talking about after 7 o'clock at night or something, making sure that the rooms are comfortable by 7 a.m. So all that really started generating a lot of savings in the district, and it was kind of shown in a lot of these graphs that we had where we had the real-time energy use, that our demand was lower, 24-hour period all the way across the board in attachment 6, and the percentage of demand in kilowatts that we had at any particular time during the day was also decreased in Blackman Elementary. So I guess just to say all that, we're actually still collecting a lot of data. We're analyzing all this information. We're trying to focus on where you can save energy just on the way the schools are operated. We're still going back and talking to all the schools to say, okay, you've got a fall break coming up, you've got a winter break coming up, you've got these times where you're not in school. Who's going to be in the school? What times are they going to be in the school? And really trying to go about gathering that information so we can control the school and conserve your energy use. So that's what we're doing. We're also very excited that all this work that you kind of set out and monitoring all this data is going to pay off. There's a loan application coming out tomorrow from the state of Tennessee, Energy Efficient Schools Initiative Program. I think Gary discussed with you approval for about $500,000 for a loan. What we're going to do is we're going to look at all the opportunities to borrow money from the district through this program, but we're looking at a lot of energy cost savings that are going to be 2-year and less paybacks, and basically have a program where all the money you borrow, the energy savings are going to pay for all that. And that's not going to be through an energy service company that's going to guarantee a lot of things and come in and replace a lot of equipment. But all these controls that we can put on the systems and basically some other actions that we can take are going to save you a lot of money over the next 5-7 years. And I think that's what we're really looking at, and it's really exciting. So. And everything we're doing is we're monitoring, we're data logging every kind of new technology that we're bringing in to making sure what it's going to save you in energy cost, and I'm bringing all that to Rutherford County as I can. You know, one of the things that we have to consider is TVA had a 1.5% rate increase October 1st. Based on your energy use between October and the end of June in 2000, last school year, 13-14, to get the same amount of dollars that you put in the budget for the energy, we'll actually save $102,000 in what we call avoided cost. In other words, if we can get you to the same budget, you'll know that we saved you $102,000, which is a 1.5% rate increase from what you had between October and the end of June last year. So we're going to continue to try to hold your line on your budget and even, make, like I said, make improvements to your school system at the same time. So I think you did a really good job, and Jeff's doing a really good job, and Gary, and I just thank you for being here, and thank you for the opportunity to update you. And if you have any questions on the report, get with Gary, and I'll be able to answer any of those questions for you.
Thank you, Mr. Graham.
Any discussion, or are we ready to move on?
I think we're ready to move on. Well, did you have something, Ms. Moore?
I do have a question. I'm just, so the program, the savings program has been in place for a year now, correct? Do we have an actual dollar amount that resulted as far as savings?
We have bits and pieces, so we don't really know. I mean, exactly, we're still logging data and those kinds of things. We have some schools that are not totally in yet. We're trying to integrate all the numbers that we have into the system, and we're also trying to get things so we can meter them appropriately. We're having trouble metering some things to actually see. But as he said, we are the 1.5% increase, we've saved that in our entire budget. Plus, we've saved more than that, up over $100,000 just this past 6 months. So we know that we've saved that. And last year to this year, we didn't have to increase the line item budget number. Our utilities, even with the increases and stuff, we still have the same number. And TVA is actually saying that we're going to have a mild winter, but I'm hearing that it's not going to be mild. So they're saying that this winter should be a fairly normal winter. I saw a woolly worm driving a snowmobile the other day, so who knows what we're going to have.
Thank you.
You show up at the county commission with a line item and you're still doing the line item. You didn't just, it wasn't a 1 year thing. So energy is every year, and you show up with a budget line item that's the same or less than the year before. That gets their attention real quick, and they're grateful for that also, obviously, as we would be at our home. But it doesn't always work that way. But this has been, at least shows signs of considerable success with water and electricity, and if I might say, the sloping roofs and geothermal, which you mentioned today. And he gave a great talk today, by the way, to Rutherford County. He's not going to tell you about it, but he did. But anyway, when you show up with a line item that's less or the same, and everybody knows the cost has gone up, that's an impressive thing.
Other items, gentlemen?
Anybody have anything?
Are you going to just review the building program for a while and maybe bring that back around?
What's the pleasure of the board? I'm certainly think we would want to look at it, and of course email or call you or Mr. Odom with questions too. Is that okay with the board to let's chew on this for a little while? And there may be some other items in the report, the reports that we've received tonight that you may want to contact Mr. Clardy and get clarification on further explanation.
I'd just like to thank all of our consultants for coming tonight. They're a very valuable part of our team. We've invested in them, and they've invested in us, and it's paying off. So we appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Do you have anything else, Mr. Clardy?
No, sir.
Board members, anything else?
When do we show up with the 5-year plan, Mr. Odom? Have they contacted you at all, County Commission, on?
No, I have not heard from them.
When do you normally do that? In late spring?
We have done it earlier sometimes because every November is when we have this meeting. And then when the board kind of gels on what you want to approve, then we make it available to the commission.
Of course, we would advise trying to get in before the budget stuff starts up for next year.
I will say this, before we send anything related to building program, whether it's 5-year plan or capital projects or anything, I certainly as a board member would like for there to be a big star asterisk that says that we need the full funding of the, I'm not looking at it right now, 5 cents.
Right, that's correct.
And
Projects?
yeah, for those capital projects, and that not a single document goes over there without that point highlighted as part of whatever presentation is made. That, for me, that is the first and foremost thing that needs to be done, and possibly even move to 6.
Well, the other big elephant in the middle of the room is technology, and we even discussed potentially asking for a half cent or a cent for technology, and with the testing that's coming down the pike, wherever the legislature goes, right. We're still staring down that barrel too. So, Ms. Michaels, should we incorporate this into, Mr. Odom, your input too? Should we incorporate maybe another look at the plan through a regular meeting, or should we schedule another special call? What is your suggestion?
I would say go ahead, go home and look at it and see. The pressing thing to me, there's 2 or 3 property issues there that developers are something we know that we're looking at, that you'll see, and when we travel, we may have time frames there that's a big issue, because if you don't have the property, you can't necessarily do the addition, or you cannot do the building to accommodate. So the thing that's going to come quickest, I think, Mr. Aaron, is going to be some of that, to look at some of that property. And then again, I think our issue, and again, if you'll look kind of at our growth numbers here and where you are, if you ask me tonight, I'd say the middle school in that Smyrna area is probably going to rise to the top of where we've got the issue for capacity right now. The Murfreesboro building the elementary school certainly helped us some here, where we were this time a year or so ago worrying about Blackman Elementary and what it was happening there, and all of that has given us a little chance to a gasp of breath there in some of that. I did hear Dr. Gilbert say that her John Pittard Elementary School is now over 900 again. So they may be going back themselves to looking at something on that side of town for them to deal with elementary school in that too. But that only helps us with 6th grade when that happens. But it's certainly helped us a lot, because most of ours on that side are much further out. You got to go out to Las Casas, or you got to go to Walter Hill, or you get much further out of the city than we had certainly over here at Blackman.
What's our next board meeting?
Generally, they announce a budget calendar, I guess, for the county commission in early February. So I guess we can kind of, plan on that. I thought what Mr. Holliday just said is exactly right. I don't know if 6 cents is attainable or not, but certainly to restore the full 5 would be absolutely critical. And the technology situation, And I think the responsibility of this board, I believe, just like other government, is to don't wait till you have a crisis. And if we continue to underfund the technology portion of this, I mean, it's talking about biting us. It's really seriously going to bite us. And I'll get in one other word on something else too, and that is on the nickel. I know that absolutely without question that Oakland High School and Riverdale High School both are going to have a gym floor. I mean, they're going to have one, or they're not going to be having PE, and they're not going to be playing any basketball. And that's coming up within, I'd say, the next 12 or 18 months without question. Well, that's part of that nickel that you were talking about. And although those were small, probably less than $100,000 each, probably less than $75,000 each. But still, that's part of that money. And we need to get it back.
Well, why don't we plan on the next board meeting? We'll have, that'll give us, what, 10 days, almost 10 days with a work session and a board meeting. So let's be prepared to discuss and vote on either a recommendation or a decision at that time.
A recommendation for a 5-year plan, and the order?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right. Anything else this evening? We've had quite a bit of time, some great discussion. Again, thank you very much for the presentation. So, if there's nothing else to come before this board, we stand adjourned.